Species.
Beard care is a passionate affair, and just like me, Viking Revolution takes that very seriously. Let's face it, your beard makes a statement, so make it a good one and embrace the Viking experience. From beard oils and balms, to combs and brushes, and of course, mustache wax, you'll find everything you need at VikingRevolution.com. Don't have a beard? Sorry to hear that. I bet you have a special beard in your life though. Viking Revolution Premium Beard Care Products. You deserve the best, and so does your beard.
There are things in life where things are right in front of you, like for a long time, and you don't notice it or you don't comprehend it or understand it. Mm-hmm. You know, then when you see it, you're like, how did I never pick up on this before? Right. And that's something that happens to me a lot. I'm the guy that'll go to your house and notice that you've done something in the front yard. It's like, hey, did you just, put those pavers down? Or, when did that kid show up? And they're all like, that was 4 years ago when I did that.
Sure.
That happens to me. Other things like that happens to me will be like something will take a long time to land. Like I listened to that song "Relax" by Frankie Goes to Hollywood for a long time. I was way too old before I figured out why do people think this song is vulgar. And I was like, it's pretty obvious now. And it's similar. I think I've mentioned before on here that it took me so long to realize that Whitesnake was essentially a penis joke of a band name, which is awesome. So I found out something that equally blew my mind. Do you know that rams are just male sheep?
I don't think I ever really put that together. Rams are male sheep.
Rams are male sheep.
I don't think I knew that. I mean, I might have known that somewhere in the recesses of my mind.
Right.
But I just thought sheep were... So when you see a big flock of sheep, I don't know, do you call them a flock? Yeah, flock of sheep.
Maybe.
Herd of sheep, maybe?
Right.
Those are all females?
No.
Oh, so there are some rams in there too.
There's some rams in there.
I mean, unless they've got the...
But not all rams have horns.
Oh, that's why.
But I thought rams were some sort of like weird hybrid of goats and sheep.
Yeah. I thought they were their own breed also.
Yeah. Rams are just male sheep.
Rams are just male sheep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, right before we started this podcast, you and I watched a really great video about rams too.
We did. And I knew it. I was like, I wasn't sure how I was going to open with you. And I'm like, that seals
That's
it.
Incredible.
It's meant to.
Yeah. So
it's meant to be.
We just watched a video from 1986 called Ram It with the 1986 Rams. It'd be weird if it was the 1987 Rams since it was in 1986. But yeah, I wonder if you were to poll the Los Angeles Rams, if they would know that. But no, thank you. I mean, you're constantly bringing the animal knowledge to us. And I'm trying to gauge how big of an idiot I look like, that we both look like right now.
I don't think we're that bad off. So I did some Googling afterwards to make sure. And I saw some other questions that came up that made me feel better about that.
Oh, good. Was it on, were they from Quora? Because if
you
ever want to feel better, go to Quora.
Yeah, except there were a couple ones that like I was like pretty sure I agreed with what they were saying, and then Quora would have the same thing and it'd throw me off again.
Right.
So some of the other questions I saw when I looked up what are male sheep called include, is a goat a male version of a sheep?
Oh, geez.
Are rams and the sheep the same?
Yeah.
So it was coming up pretty early there, or pretty obviously. And I also saw some things speculating on interspecial breeding, which I think might be possible, but I don't want to know because I just don't want to be confused because it'll go back. Because I think, like I mentioned, I thought maybe rams were some sort of goat, sheep, unholy alliance.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen The Island of Dr. Moreau. It can be done.
Right. And maybe someone else had, H.G. Wells figured out one time, had the same revelation that I had, that rams are just male sheep.
Right.
And he's like, I've got an idea for a new book.
Right.
It'll be made into several terrible movies after I'm dead, whatever a movie is.
Right. And isn't there a documentary that's like better than the movie? I don't remember what it's called, but...
There is. It's about the making of the last one.
The last one, which had Vern Troyer in it.
It did.
Randomly.
And Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, I believe.
You're right.
Was Val Kilmer in that?
Yeah, that was an interesting stage for Val Kilmer. And we don't need to go down that road. I don't know if we've ever told our Val Kilmer story, but maybe we'll save that for the after show. I don't know.
I think we're saving that sometime. There's been a couple guests I've tried to hook in with our Val Kilmer story that I don't want to give it away yet.
Yeah, we'll save that.
It's a good story.
So, yeah, Rams, we're here to tell you that neither of us actually had known that. Now that you say that, I guess it makes sense. I don't know, but
I'm going to have to listen to Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood again, too, to see if there's anything else in that song that I've missed out on that maybe is super obvious now. But
right. Well, welcome to Origin of Species. My name is Scott. I'm here with my good friend Steve, as always. We're about to get into some phrases, but first I want to let you know that we'll be doing a game of Know Your Onions at the end of this show with our good friend Erin Sarro.
Oh, Erin Sarro of the Panic at the Costco Species podcast.
That's right.
That she co-hosted with Scott during the pandemic. And what's good about that is it's a good kind of, I think, fingerprint of what happened during the early pandemic, and who knows what else we'll be hiding from. You know, when President Kanye West starts battling the Martians, it might be good to come back up again and have some more conversations as we're hiding at home.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did it. We've talked about this before, how the Panic at the Costco podcast was conceived and put out in about 2 days, because it was like, let's just get this out there. And we did about 10 or 11 of them. We did a back to school one. We were talking the other day. We're like, should we do an election one? And we both were like, no.
Forget that.
We'll wait and see.
You'd have to record that the day before the election.
Oh, gosh.
Because who knows,
I know.
because President Kanye West isn't even on the ballot yet.
That's true.
It's going to happen.
There's still so much to go between. Well, I don't want to say what the date is.
Yeah, because no one will remember. Whatever goofy thing happened on this date will be obsolete in a week.
Right, exactly. So, anyway, check it out. I will tease the Know Your Onions with the fact that there's a very interesting Richard Simmons story at the end, which is a little disturbing, but
it is. But I liked it.
We like Richard Simmons, and we like Erin.
And we like Erin. Erin is a great conversationalist, and it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to reliving that time.
Yes. So Steve, we're recording this in my home studio as usual. I could say our home studio, but it's actually in my house. But it's our studio.
Our studio, your house.
Yeah, exactly. And when you got here, unfortunately, I had to inform you that my downstairs toilet was not working. Which is mainly because I'm not very handy, and over the years, I've jerry-rigged it. Jerry-rigged it one too many times.
Okay. Now you said two different words.
I laid that on really thick. Jerry-rigged, and this is a true story. I have jerry-rigged it, or jury-rigged it. I never know which one to use.
Okay, well, maybe we'll find out as we discuss.
It would be so cool if there was a podcast that would just tackle these issues. So
yeah.
Well, yes, we're going to actually tackle that one tonight. We're going to clear up the difference between jury-rigged and jerry-rigged. And as I just demonstrated there a little ham-handedly, this is one that I really never know the right thing to say. Right. I generally think I go with jerry-rigged, but I do that thing sometimes where I'm not sure, so I kind of say it so that it could be either way. I jerry-rigged it, right?
Mumble the difference. I like that.
Mumble the difference.
That's a new one we just invented. And hopefully also we might get some toilet tips from you, because I have a leaky toilet at home that I've been delaying because it runs a lot, but at least it runs, and I can empathize with the situation that you're in.
Yeah, so I really am not handy, and I really do. You should see some of the things I've jerry-rigged. I am learning how to do this. Yes. And so I really am, it's going to take me a long time. I've already started the process.
Yeah.
I've learned the difference between the flush valve and the, what's it called? Not the intake valve, but the water valve. There's two valves in there.
Right.
And this is pretty easy stuff for like anybody born before a certain age, any actual man that's
right.
a real man.
Yeah.
You and I, it's like, we know we can do it, but I'll be able to help you out for sure once I finish this, because it's going to take so long.
I believe in
for me to do. So when it comes to jerry-rigged and jury-rigged, I did kind of go, why haven't we done this one? Because it comes up, I think, a lot. Let me ask you, please. I have a two-part question.
Okay.
One is it a term you use? I'm always curious about where you stand with the term. And then have you ever had like a bad experience with jerry or jury rigging anything?
Sure. So I am very familiar with that term. I think I use it a lot. I always use the version jerry rig. And it's very handy because I am not very skilled with my hands or putting things together or doing anything practical. So, generally a home project that I work on has some sort of like last minute gimmick or something to kind of get it through. I think of a phrase that my father-in-law used to use which is a bit ironic because he was extremely handy, but along the lines of if it can't be fixed with duct tape, it's not worth fixing.
Yeah.
And I somehow sometimes have to embrace that, because I think the second part of your question was, have you ever had to do that?
Right.
And yes, on absolutely everything I do,
Of course.
Ends up at some point that there's some duct tape, or I like paper clips to attach things.
Sure.
I'll use that of like, well, somehow, and it's amazing what I can think a paper clip can do, in things in my home that, the fact that it's not on fire right now or has not collapsed.
Right.
I don't want to brag, but one of my more recent uses of jerry rigging was I was trying to replace the steps on my deck.
Oh.
That I think I sent you pictures that at
You
one
did.
point it became what it looked like, some sort of angry outsider art. And at the end, as I realized that I had been purchasing different sizes pieces of lumber, every step was a different size, and it was still a little bit off balance. So I put a fin. Do you remember the fin that ended up? There was a fin that functionally worked. For jerry rigging, it worked. Aesthetically, it wasn't very good. But a shout out to my neighbor, the mayor, who I've been blessed with many awesome neighbors, including the mayor, who came in, bailed me out, didn't emasculate me, at least to my face. I don't know what he said to everyone else on the court. And frankly, if he did, I don't blame him.
Who cares?
But yeah.
It got done.
Yeah. And that's the thing with jerry rig. Sometimes you just got to get it done, and you jerry rig it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've all done it, and you and I both have done that. Duct tape had to come up in this episode,
Right?
Because that's duct tape. I used this. I guess it was caulk. Mm-hmm. I don't know, some sort of caulk or glue or something on my upstairs. A lot of toilet issues apparently. I don't know what's happening, but I had this Sonos speaker
in the toilet.
Yeah, no, not in the toilet, but up on the this cabinet above the toilet, and I was listening to music, and I must have had it too loud or something. The Sonos speaker fell off the cabinet, hit the tank of the toilet, and like cracked it, and water started coming out. I'm like, son of a gun. And
for sure.
So I ended up trying just putting this stuff over it, and it worked, but it looks terrible. It looked like if you look at the tank right now, it just looks like just this huge line of like jelly caulk something all over it. So let's talk about the term jury. Had you heard jury rigged?
I have not heard that. Okay. Now I've heard of rigging the jury.
Yes.
But I always thought jerry rigged was like a separate thing of like there was some crafty guy named Jerry that lived. That's how I always interpreted it, but we'll find out the truth here.
Well, we're going to find out the truth. But just to be clear, so you hadn't heard somebody say I've jury rigged it before. You've always just heard it as jerry rigged.
Yes.
Okay. So I have heard it as both ways, jury rigged and jerry rigged. And I had also thought maybe there's something to do with the jury. Let's start with Merriam-Webster. And by the way, I think Merriam-Webster got a new SEO guy.
Really?
Well, we barely used Merriam-Webster in the first 3 seasons of this. Now we're always starting with it. Yeah. And I'm like, did they get a new search engine optimization person? Because why is Merriam-Webster always coming up? Not that we always just go with the first thing. Of course not.
Right.
But they're out there.
Yeah. I generally go with the second thing. But they're doing a good job of getting up there.
Yeah, that's how you know the research is good, when you dive into this the second search result. So Merriam-Webster has a really very helpful post on this, and they actually threw out a third option as well. So the title of the article is Jerry Built versus Jury Rigged versus Jerry Rigged.
Whoa. 3
terms, 3 strong options. So this article first establishes that there are 3 different terms. So let's talk about the definitions that Merriam-Webster lays out, and then we'll talk about the origins, because they come from separate places.
All right.
The first one is jury rigged, which the definition is to erect, construct, or arrange in a makeshift fashion.
Okay.
Jerry built means built cheaply and unsubstantially, or carelessly or hastily put together. So at first glance, that sounds like it's pretty much the same thing,
right? But
it's not, right? There's a nuance there. So
right.
if you go back and listen to these again, the first one, jury rigged, means you're having to work with what you have to construct something in a makeshift way. So you're you're using that duct tape, you're using that paper clip, and you're making it work.
It's like the end of every A-Team episode where they would, put together something and build a machine gun out of a bag of tin cans.
It's a great way to put it. It's a very 80s. It's very MacGyver. It's like, hey, I've got these 3 things, and that plan's gonna come together. That's jury rigged. And we'll talk about the origin in a minute.
Okay.
Jerry built is a little different. The connotation there being something was done cheaply and hastily, more out of like cutting corners or not being skilled. So that's jury rigged and Jerry built. And you kind of see the difference there, right? Very nuanced.
And Jerry built really appealing to me because it reminds me of a, potentially mentally ill person working on their stairs and something comes out, their lack of skill and also some deep-seated anger could come out too.
So jerry-rigged is the third one, which kind of a mixture of the two, which means organized or constructed in a crude or improvised manner. So that's kind of a catch-all really for the other two.
Yeah.
Merriam-Webster concludes that when it comes to the usage of these 3, this is what they say: jury-rigged is the best choice when the makeshift nature of the effort is to be emphasized rather than the shoddiness that results. Okay. So again, hey man, you didn't really have it, like you actually did a good thing by getting this to work.
Right.
The one who Jerry builds something builds it badly. So why do we have these 3 separate terms? So I'm going to use a couple of sources here: Worldwide Words, which we always use, and then Grammarphobia, which I'm really going to lean on a lot with this one.
Okay.
Let's start with the oldest of the terms, which is jury-rigged, the one that you hadn't heard of and that I had only recently heard and started to really wonder which it was. If I had to guess what jury-rigged meant, I would have thought what you said early. It has something to do with a court jury.
Right.
And it being rigged for a certain outcome. It's not even close to that. Nothing to do with it.
Okay.
It actually goes back to sailing, which we like on the show. We haven't talked about sailing in a while. It's been a little too long.
Yeah.
I do want to let you know, Steve, there will be no one getting flogged.
Well, is it really about sailing then? Does Bunny Wigglesworth at least show up?
No Bunny Wigglesworth. He didn't learn any new skills out sailing. So according to Grammarphobia, and this is backed up by Worldwide Words. So because we haven't used Grammarphobia a lot, I wasn't going to just use that as the one source, but it's backed up. The use of jury to mean makeshift or temporary has roots in Middle English. In the late 1400s, a makeshift temporary sail was called a jory sail, according to the University of Michigan's Middle English Dictionary. In later centuries, it was spelled jury sail with a U. The first one, the Middle English was jory, J-O-R-I. The adjective jury, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, was used by sailors to mean to put together or contrive for temporary use, and first appeared in its modern spelling around 1616 with the term jury mast. And again, so this was 1616. It reminds me of, I was an English major in college, and I do remember I had to do a presentation once about in a class called The History of the English Language, and a lot of terms we use today really did come from sailors were the first to start documenting words as a lexicon, because they realized we all need to be on the same page. Right. Like when I say this word, we all need to know what we're talking about.
Or we're going to die a painful death here in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Or if you're in the British Navy, you're going to get flogged.
And then die a painful death in the middle of the ocean.
I take it back. We are going to talk about flogging. Just we're going to just insert it for no reason. So that takes care of jury. So it's a temporary mast put up in place of one that has been broken or carried away. So in addition to jury mast, there are a number of nautical compounds such as jury rudder, jury tiller, jury hatch, and jury sheets, which made me think jury sheets may have been because they were 3 sheets to the wind. Oh, it's those same sheets.
Call back.
Yep, they had to make jury sheets. So temporary things that were made. That's where that jury comes from. Now, the precise origins of the sailing terms jury and rig are unknown. We don't know why those words are what they used, but it is what they used. That Middle English dictionary I mentioned compares jury with the Old French noun, which, by the way, sounds like a game show from Saturday Night Live, but a little different.
Yeah.
Old French noun. So there's an Old French noun, jory, spelled Joerie, which meant joke, jesting, or play. Oh. So the suggestion is, and this isn't for sure, but it's possible that it could have been a jocular term invented by sailors. And we know how jocular sailors can be. And so as far as the verb rig, that appeared around 1500 or earlier. It was meant to prepare a sailing ship or boat for going to sea, specifically to set up the sails and rigging of a sailing vessel. So by the 1700s, rig had acquired another meaning. The OED says that rig meant to construct, put together, or place in position hastily or as a makeshift.
Okay.
And the dictionary cites this passage from an anonymous poem published in 1754, which went a little something like this. Up a rig, a jury foremast. She writes. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
But there it is in 1754. Up and rig a jury foremast.
That makes sense.
So I wanted to go into jury, meaning something sort of jocular. We think that's where it came from. Rig, those two were joined together for the adjective jury-rigged. And that was first recorded in the 1780s. Merriam-Webster cites an early example from the Morning Herald in London. And it says, La Couronne, bad bottoms, jury-rigged. Once again, I don't know what that means, but they're referring to something being jury-rigged in 1782. That's the first time we see the two put together, not just the jury mast, not just the word rig, jury-rigged. So,
yeah, and we have a bad bottom, so there's probably some flogging involved
right,
with that also.
Probably some Doja Cat involved too.
All right, that's not, the sailors have been through enough. So I like that. That makes sense because if you're in a situation, again, you're at sea, life is probably at stake all the time. You're not hopping out to go to Home Depot to fix something. You're not calling, you're not going over to your neighbor's house to get some help. You've got to work with what you have and with who's there. So I could see how that would make sense and how that would stick with people also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do like too that it looks like it probably came from jocular sailors. And again, that's just fun to say.
Yeah.
Jocular. I like the idea of jocular sailors and working, like you said, working with what they had to stay afloat. So, Steve, where does Jerry come into all this?
I don't know. I have a feeling you're going to share with us, though.
It'd be funny if I didn't.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next term.
Screw you, Glisten. You're not going to find out.
We're out of time. So I was reading up on these terms. The first thing I came across was, some of these websites that a lot of times, there are these websites that we go to and the articles are in response to questions that readers have.
Right.
They say, and so this one, I got a lot of, when my grandfather came back from World War II or even I saw World War I,
right, they
were using the term jerry-rigged and wondering if that has anything to do with slang for German, Jerry being slang for German.
Oh.
And it's an interesting question and an idea. So the truth is that, yes, Germans were referred to as Jerry, but the use of the name Jerry in the phrase jerry built actually came well before World War I and doesn't have anything to do with it, unfortunately. So this is going to be our only appearance real quick by the Germans, and that's just to debunk. I had never heard of the Germans referred to as Jerry.
I haven't either, but I like the Germans. I have German heritage, but when they show up somewhere, it's good for them just to be there briefly and to move on. You don't want them staying too much and starting to annex things.
So it's not that one. The most likely explanation is that there was literally a dude named Jerry that was horrible at building things.
Yeah.
Which I'm so glad because that's what you were hoping for.
Yes.
And so he was so bad that centuries later, we're still saying something is Jerry built if it was, as the OED puts it, built to sell, but not to last.
Oh my gosh. That is impressive. Considering that I built stairs that had a fin to balance them, that somehow someone was so awful that it's still used today.
So Merriam-Webster cites early usage from the 1830s. And I really like this quote. Some of these quotes you just read because you say, well, it establishes when it was used, but it's kind of boring.
Right.
I like this one. It says, quote, Mr. Heighton, a house owner, was asked what was the meaning of the Jerry style of architecture. And he said, anything that is badly built. And they said, well, what do you call the Jerry style? And he said, if the work is not well done and the houses not well finished, we can call that Jerry style. And this was reported from court testimony in the Liverpool Mercury, April 12th of 1839.
Man. So
I just have this vision of this really pissed off Mr. Heighton, who's a homeowner.
Right.
Being like, so how would you describe Jerry built? it's bad.
Yeah.
This guy, Jerry, or we don't know if it's an actual person or there was like a Jerry group, and we'll talk about that a little bit. There was also another quote from 1842 in The Guardian, also London, where it says, quote, "The warehouses themselves, which have been destroyed, were of the class called jerry-built." Going back to the OED, it says the term's origin was not ascertained, but it probably originated in some way from the name Jerry, which is what I like to believe.
Yes.
Michael Quinion threw out a couple of other options from Worldwide Words. So let's see what he had to say. He said, the word Jerry here could derive from the name of a Liverpool firm of builders, one with a reputation that has traveled, obviously, or possibly a contraction of Jericho, whose walls fell down. You will remember at the blast of a trumpet. And that's a good one.
I like that. You get some good biblical history in that. Makes it a little classier, too.
That's right. And he said, neither has been substantiated, I'm sorry to say. But the idea, I mean, that would be one of those ones that you would tell someone at a bar, like, hey, you ever, jerry-rigged? It's because it's short for Jericho. Jericho fell, the walls fell down. But that really smells like, an after-the-fact sort of folk.
You could follow that up with, do you know that most idioms regarding nautical terms involve flogging also?
Right. Yeah. I think that's one that we think is funny, but I don't know that how many other people think are funny. But
there's only one way to find out is next time you're drinking with a man you don't know is to bring up spankings.
Yeah. So the two compounds, jury-rigged and jerry-built, were blended in the late 19th century to form jerry-rigged.
Jerry-rigged.
So jerry-rigged comes straight out of those two, jerry-built and jury-rigged. So the earliest examples I found of jerry-rigged were from the 1890s. They began in the 1890s and are from newspapers published in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah. So here are a couple of examples. The first one is a man in the employ of Mr. E.J. Black narrowly escaped an accident through the tire coming off his dray. Mr. Martin, our blacksmith, fixed him up under jerry-rig. Now, this came from a small news item in the Cumberland Argus and Fruit Growers Advocate of October 17th, 1896.
That's my third favorite Australian newspaper, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And then the other one from 1904 says, I learned this one afternoon when something went wrong, the jerry-rigged derrick we were using. So look, the reason I sound awkward when I'm reading these is I really don't know what half of these words mean.
Right.
But I am sure of one thing, which is that I'm sure I'm pronouncing them absolutely correctly.
Yeah. I feel like that's a shot at me, but it's okay.
No, it's not. I say we have combined a flawless track record for Australian words and just pronouncing words in general.
Yep.
So Steve, it's a great day for me because I feel like I can confidently now use the correct term for the correct situation. So if I'm at work, I'm doing the best I can with what I have.
Right.
I'm going to use jury rigging. If I'm building a shoddy deck in my backyard, which is actually something I'd never even attempt, but I'm going to probably be jerry building it. And if it's a little bit of both, I'm jerry rigging it. So you ready to do some new slang?
I'm ready to do some new slang. So as listeners know that this year I've decided to go to Reader's Digest as my source for new slang.
Right. But you cut Oprah out of the mix.
Listen, I'm never cutting Oprah out of the mix. Oprah, I want to stay on her good side forever because she's probably here in the room with us and we don't even know it. She's everywhere. So Oprah will be back sometime. So Reader's Digest, I've been using a couple times the slang words they love for 2020. I mixed up a little bit. My slang today comes from words they loved in 2019. So still pretty current, I would think, even though 2019 feels like so many years ago.
It does. But we just did terms that came from, I think, we go all the way back to the 1400s.
Yeah.
So I think we
average out pretty good. So my term today is Finsta. And before anyone thinks I'm putting some sort of weird accent on what I'm saying, it's the word Insta, like Instagram, with an F on it. Finsta. So the reason I'm going to this, be honest, is extremely self-serving. I am using this to promote the official Origin of Species Instagram that I have, that I gladly curate. And by gladly mean I don't like it at all. But it's a necessary evil. So to be clear, before I get into this, please follow Origin of Species at Species on Instagram to see all the hard work we do.
I don't do any of it.
Right, and by we I mean I. But we're Species as a unit.
Can I just say this though? If you ever aren't sure who's doing it, you'll figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because he finds a way. Because I'm not saying you're bitter that you have to do the social media.
Yeah.
But you do get your digs in with all of your hate of kale and putting it in there, and then I feel like people are going to think I hate kale.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, so I have to combat with kale stuff on my personal account just to make people know.
And if by hate about kale, if you mean truth about kale, you're correct. That's what I
You're a
post on
kale
there.
truther.
I'm a kale truther. So to be direct, I hate social media. Just to tell you, there's nothing I like less other than kale. It's frankly the kale of technology.
I thought you were going to say kale.
It is. It's like if raccoons could somehow get into your phone. I despise it.
It sucks.
And up there with it, somehow I found a way to navigate Twitter and to keep my sanity, but Instagram's just been messing with me this year. So on a recent episode, we actually had a whole segment that we cut when we had Lauren Bingo with us.
Yeah, we did.
Because I went on a rant about reels, which I thought made me sound like a Puritan.
Yeah.
But she basically pointed out that we sound like dirty old men.
Yeah, she was uncomfortable, and I think it was a blessing in disguise that it happened to be that we had that conversation with her there. Because I think you and I, and then once she pointed it out, speaking of your intro today, where you said things that you didn't see, and then now it's all you can see is like, yeah, that sounds bad. It sounds like we're creepy dudes, but so you'll never hear that one, but. Geez, now I have to cut this because now we sound creepy, but it's not. We are not creepy.
We're not creepy, and there's nothing less creepy than telling people that you're not creepy. You definitely know you're not creepy then.
That's right.
So before I get into Finsta, please check out our wonderful, very positive, truth-telling Instagram, which is, again, it's positive. There's truth about kale, and there's no half-naked 20-year-old future strippers either.
Well, no, there aren't. And I would say now's the best time to join Speaksie's Instagram because it's we're in October and it's almost Halloween, and some of our best content comes around Halloween.
Definitely.
So you're gonna want to
time to go.
You're gonna want to see our social media content for Halloween. So now that I've built that up, Steve, I hope you can deliver.
No pressure for me. So back to the Reader's Digest, where I get all my new slang when I'm not getting it from Oprah.
Hey, real quick on Reader's Digest.
Yes.
I thought that it was a joke so we had Adrienne Appalucci on the show near the end of season 3, and when you introduced her, you mentioned Reader's Digest.
Yeah.
I thought you were making that up completely. I looked it up, and lo and behold, you're right. It does mention it really does say she wrote for Reader's Digest.
And I believe she said whatever they were going to use ended up not being
that's
used.
Right. Okay.
Which makes 100% complete.
Makes sense.
The thought of her in Reader's Digest makes me extremely happy because she is hilarious, but to see her sense of humor.
Well, she's so subversive. She wouldn't have done it straight. It would have been.
It would have been.
But I just don't understand why that comes up in her bio.
Yeah.
Somebody. So sorry, Steve. So go on with the
sure.
So Finsta.
Finsta. So I'm going to go straight to the horse's mouth for this definition. Urban Dictionary, which we generally don't like to use Urban Dictionary except for dumb stuff like Finsta.
You have to.
So from Urban Dictionary, the top definition is a spam Instagram account where people post what they are too afraid to post on a real account. And the example they give is, did you see Chris's Finsta? It's so funny. So I have another definition from Urban Dictionary from an article from 2015, an article entitled Finstagram, the Instagram Revolution. They define Finsta as, again, citing Urban Dictionary, a mixture of fake and Instagram. People, usually girls, get a second Instagram account along with their real Instagrams, Rinstagrams, which is another term. A real Instagram is a Rinstagram.
Oh, okay.
To post any pictures or videos they desire. The photos or videos posted are usually funny or embarrassing. Only your closest friends follow this account.
Mm-hmm. So I thought I had heard that term before, and I actually thought it was like another app. I had heard somebody say something about Finsta, and I was like, oh, I'm like surprised there's not a trademark issue. There's some, but apparently it's just slang for a fake Instagram account.
Right.
Okay.
So why would anyone have a fake Instagram account? So I'm going to go to an article from USA Today. The author is Brett Molina. Title of the article, Does Your Kid Have a Finsta Account? Why It's a Big Deal. And I use this article to find out why someone would have that.
Mm-hmm.
And a young lady who was 17 years old at the time, named Esther Choi, said, on my Finsta, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a more multifaceted version of me. Mm. And according to a professor at Cornell University, she said that the main reason some of her students have a Finsta account is fear of monitoring from employers or future employers, which makes sense. So if you're going to, we've discussed before, if you're going to, we actually, our advice for our children is not to do anything ever, including use any social media, because nothing good's going to come out of it.
I did have to deny my kid he wanted to get Instagram, and I had to say no. Mm-hmm. And part of that reason is because the intro we didn't get to do, which the simple version is when you go to search for things, and I don't know, you get a lot of things you don't want your kids to see, unfortunately, on Instagram. So I do have to say with the Finsta, though, I think technology has sort of screwed people that think they're getting away with this.
Right.
Because you get the thing where, like, I've had this happen where it's like, do you want to follow so-and-so? And I'm like, oh, that's my nephew. Wait, my nephew has an account. I'm like, oh.
Right.
Oh, that's his other account.
Right.
It's like.
But now you have a term to put with
I
that.
do have a term to put with it.
So when it comes to the term Finsta, I really don't care. This was more for me to promote the wonderful Origin of Species Instagram site, which you can find us by searching at Species. And as Scott mentioned, it's Halloween. Some of our best content comes. So the term Finsta, because I just don't like it, just because it has something to do with Instagram, which somehow has gotten worse thanks to Reels.
Yeah, I don't like this term.
Okay. Yeah. So that's our very positive new slang.
So the next phrase we're doing is a fun one. It's son of a gun. Mm-hmm. And I really like this one because it's so versatile, right? It can mean, like, you're surprised. Like, you son of a gun. Mm-hmm. You can call someone a son of a gun.
Right.
Like, you motorboat son of a gun.
Yeah.
So it can be a bad thing. It can kind of be, I think you can kind of use it like bless your heart in a way.
I was actually thinking that. It's a multifaceted idiom or phrase.
So it's all in the inflection, like with bless your heart, the way you say it. And it really is fun. And another thing I like about it is because your boy, Ric Flair, called himself the stylin', profilin',
wheelin' dealin',
limousine riding,
Rolex wearing,
kiss stealing, son of a gun. And then it goes on. And do yourself a favor. Matter of fact, should we put it in again? We already put it into one shot.
I have no problem interjecting Ric Flair anywhere.
Listen to Ric Flair real quick, and we'll be right back.
You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun, and I'm having a hard time holding these alligators down. Woo!
It gets better every time.
Just like him.
It does. So how do you feel about this one, Steve? Do you like it? Do you use it? Would you be offended if somebody called you a son of a gun?
I would not. And I think it's one that I've always thought of it as a kind of G-rated version of another son of a phrase.
Yes.
So I was thinking, as you mentioned, that this one's kind of tough to like be used in a bad way. Like if someone's mad at you and said son of a gun, it almost would seem silly because it's something like you say, you hear your grandpop saying it, and not even your grandpa, your grandpop. Someone calls you a son of a gun. It's like a very fun thing. So I wouldn't be offended by that. I'd actually be complimented. Someone calls you a son of a gun most of the time. It seems to be a good thing.
Well, you remember in the new slang where you said you hate social media?
Yes.
Well, that applies to this as well because in social media, the discourse has gotten to the point where on Twitter, the things that people call each other are so horrible. It's the worst of the worst that son of a gun just seems super tame. Yeah. I mean, it's like calling somebody kind of a bastard, which we'll kind of get into here. Mm-hmm. So it just feels very tame now.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't either. I think honestly, we've used the word jocular a bunch. I think it's more of a jocular thing where, hey, you son of a gun, get over here, boy.
Yeah.
I said that weird, but...
No, you said it right.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a source that we don't use that often, and I kind of have some mixed feelings about, which is Snopes.com.
Okay.
I will give a shout out to Snopes though, because back in the day, I did use this site a lot.
Yeah.
To debunk dumb stuff that people would post on social media, you know, and I haven't in a while, but,
Right.
And it was also one of those ones that, not in my current job, but there have been jobs in the past where there are times where things are very slow and you're looking to kill some time.
Yeah.
Snopes was a fun place to kind of read of all the sort of urban myths that you had heard. And was this a true thing? Like, has no one ever died on the grounds of Disney World or whatever? So they have a whole Disney section on it. Did you ever used to go to Snopes at all?
I did. Not that much.
Yeah.
They were occasionally, I think it was kind of pre-Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Which I don't think reflects well on me that's now my resource of things. But, you know, that generally if you want information.
Yeah.
But I have used it before.
Okay, so Snopes the reason now it's kind of like not one of my favorites is because they've gotten a little political and kind of weird with how they've treated debunking things. But in this, they had a really good article. And in fact, this article that I'm going to use as part of my research here comes from 2002. It's the appropriately titled Etymology of Son of a Gun. And they note right at the top that this is a disputed etymology, which it is. They go ahead and they debunk right off the bat some folk etymologies of where son of a gun came from, which I can run through. So here we go. The first one, it says, the phrase son of a gun originated on ships in the early 18th century when women were allowed to accompany their husbands or new boyfriends on long sea voyages. During such voyages, mothers gave birth to their children behind a canvas curtain near the midship gun. If the paternity of the newborn was in doubt, and it often was, as many of those women were prostitutes, the child was facetiously registered in the log as the son of a gun. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, so many hallmarks of fake, which is, you know, little details that don't need to be there. A canvas curtain, you know, and it's just silly. Here's the next one. When in port and with the crew restricted to the ship, women were allowed to live aboard. So this is pretty much the same one, but it's when in port. Sometimes children would be born on the ship, and a convenient place for giving birth was between the guns on the gun deck. Why was that convenient? Who knows? That's not true. Life on board a British man of war, this is the third one, was hard for the wife of a sailor. Again, this is just starting off. You're like, here we go. Whenever they have to tell you obvious stuff, and here goes. She shared her husband's hammock and his daily ration of salted beef, dried peas, hardtack, and cheese while staying out of the way of daily activities. One of the most difficult, inevitable consequences of wives following their husbands to sea was childbirth. The term son of a gun resulted from the firing of a ship's gun to hasten a difficult birth, which I really do like that one. I like the idea that, like, they're out to sea. This woman's trying to give birth, and in order to induce, they're like, you know, fire in the hole.
And that actually sounds like something a man would do.
Well,
what else can we do to help this woman along? Well, let's just fire a gun off. That should help.
It's so stupid. And Snopes, I tell you, they were very thorough back. This article went so far. I mean, they went by and they explained why each of these were wrong. Guess what? We're not doing that, folks, because it just gets boring. And these are obviously fake. The last folk etymology. Again, these are all sort of different flavors of the same thing. Which says, in the interest of a difficult birth, on land this time, the assistance of nearby military bases would be solicited. They'd be persuaded to fire one or more of their cannons, the noise of which would startle the distressed woman sufficiently to induce labor. Now listen, that's not how it works.
Right.
Okay, so let's just move on. That is medically not how it works. It doesn't help. It hurts.
You're on a boat, you have to threaten to flog them. That's the way that you would hasten that.
So these are all hilarious, and they're all made up. Another one that they mentioned was that son of a gun ties the phrase to the reason for shotgun weddings. The child of such unions was deemed a son of a gun, which it actually seems a little more reasonable, but it doesn't really work because that meaning did not appear in connection to the term until 1922.
Okay.
And this has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
A more believable speculation for the origin of the term goes back to the occupation of the father being away from the location of the birth. So this is where it starts to make sense.
Okay.
In this explanation, the gun refers to the soldier
equating the arms with the man, basically.
Okay.
And the making of any soldier's or sailor's male child, whether it was conceived in wedlock or not, was a son of a gun. And frankly, they say here in Snopes, the well-cadenced rhymes were just as well-loved centuries ago as they are now, which is why many of these phrases we have, such as in like Flynn, which we've covered, sticks around because it's just so good to say.
Yeah.
Son of a gun's great to say. So let me, before I wrap this one and kind of get to what this is, go over to Phrase Finder. Because Phrase Finder, so really, and this is what Snopes does, is they debunk. They don't say this is exactly what the truth is. They debunk. That's all they really do.
And we bunk here. We don't just debunk. We also bunk.
Well, I feel like you're only doing half the job if you just debunk.
Yeah.
A debunk without a bunk is I don't know. It's not. It's kind of unsatisfying. So that we can get all our favorites in here today, we're going to go to Phrase Finder they give 2 possible origins. So the first one is that naval one that I just said about, dad's off to sea. And here's what they say. The sources for the point of view that son of a gun is son of a military man. Here's the sources. They come from John B's book, A Dictionary of the Turf from 1823. And he literally says in this dictionary, son of a gun means a soldier's bastard. And then in 1867, the Sailor's Word Book, which I like, that's a great title for a name. And this goes back to what I was saying, how sailors had to come up with these things. And they literally would just, this is the Sailor's Word Book.
Right.
William Henry Smith in 1867 says, a son of a gun is an epithet conveying contempt in a slight degree and originally applied to boys born afloat. When women were permitted to accompany their husbands at sea, one admiral declared he literally was thus cradled under the breast of a gun carriage. So now we're getting to where that kernel of truth that we've talked about in the past. I think you've mentioned that a few times. These folk etymologies of like, the best place to have a baby was underneath a huge cannon, and the general would come out, and then somebody would get flogged, and then boom, you had a baby. Well, no, but it really does have something to do with, dad's not around, or the boy is born while they're out to sea. Right. There's something going on there. The first printed example of a son of a gun, just the term itself, is from the British Apollo, number 43. And basically all it says is, quote, you're a son of a gun. And that source doesn't mention the military at all. And it's not in the context of the military. So all those explanations about son of a gun coming from the naval, a sailor at sea or being birthed at sea, I want to believe that has to do with it. But we do have in 1708, somebody saying you're a son of a gun. That was 150 years before the naval stuff.
Wow.
So who knows? But here's the thing, though. Smith himself, the guy that wrote this in the British Apollo, was a Royal Navy admiral. So he was in a good position to know what went on a Navy ship. So look, we can't say for sure it came from that, but there's so much, smoke. When there's smoke, there's fire, sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you were Barry Poppick or Ben Zimmer or one of these guys that's really rigorous, they'd have to point out, and we'll do the same, that we can't say for sure it's where it came from.
Right.
But it could be.
It makes sense. I think the one involving a military father makes sense in that you could have a child who potentially was born out of wedlock, or a child that was an orphan because his father passed away in war.
Yeah.
You can kind of see those things come, and you could see how it could have a double meaning of a honorable meeting, or also questioning someone's patronage.
Yeah.
Kind of more of the bastard sort of side of things.
You could see some other kid making fun of a kid, calling him a son of a gun. And so, how we started by saying, I don't care if somebody calls me a son of a gun, it's funny.
Right.
But if it was 1820 and some other kid is saying, you don't have a dad, nobody knows who your dad is, or your dad was, or whatever, that's a pretty bad put down. So, Steve, we usually have a theme for our episodes, and let me explain my thinking here, because maybe you're wondering, why do we do jerry-rigged and son of a gun as our episode? And my thinking was, it's a bit of a stretch, but they both have nautical stuff in them, whether it's true or not. So you had the jury mast, right? And for jury-rigged, and then you had son of a gun potentially having to do with the Navy and sailors. There's another reason, too, which is that both of these have terms which are very closely related.
Okay.
And you could kind of get confused and think that they one had to do with the other, which they really don't. So for son of a gun, the second thing that Phrase Finder said is that the term son of a gun is euphemistic and derived as a conveniently rhyming alternative to son of a bitch / whore, which, by the way, you don't get a lot of son of a whore. That's pretty good. That's pretty funny, actually.
That is. I think that's one you got to save really for for a special occasion. That's like that bottle of champagne you only share for special events.
It's also one that, like, now that I see it, I'm like, why don't I say that? It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It'd be like a good, I mean, it's not nice to say.
Yeah.
So
but it could be in one of those situations that you and I know that when you're with close friends, it's very much a male thing.
Sure.
That you see a good friend you haven't seen in a while, you're going to call them a horrible name.
Right.
But it's a term of endearment. You know, when you call somebody that's a longtime friend a son of a gun or another version of that,
right.
You know, it can be a term of endearment.
Yeah, for sure. So it could have to do with son of a gun being an alternative to that. Son of a bitch has been around as a part of the language for centuries. And it's certainly long enough to where, you know, euphemisms could come up for a variant of it.
Right.
So it could be, well, you know what? I did it at the beginning of this show because I said son of a, and I didn't want to say son of a bitch, so I said son of a gun. This one comes from Shakespeare. Shakespeare used something similar in King Lear in 1605. He says, one that art nothing but the composition of a knave, beggar, coward, pander, and the son and heir of a mongrel bitch. So it is likely that the expression was in use in England at the time, but it really becomes big in America. So the first time it's used in print after Shakespeare is in 1625.
Right.
And it's in Beaumont and Fletcher's Coxcomb. And he says, they had no mothers. They are the sons of bitches.
Man.
It's kind of fun when it's said in that way. It's kind of formal.
Yeah.
And then in the Middlesex Session Rolls, 1655, which these all sound dirty for some reason, but they're really not. Coxcomb and Middlesex Session Rolls. It says, she did revile him, calling him ye son of a bitch, asking him also where ye bawd his mother was.
Man.
You know, so after that, the phrase son of a bachelor got coined, and we don't hear that one very often.
It doesn't sound fun.
But that was used as a alternative for son of a bitch, which kind of gives a little bit of fuel to the fact that son of a gun could have come from not wanting to say son of a bitch, but the timing is we're not sure. So like a lot of the words and phrases that were used in Tudor England, son of a bitch was taken across the Atlantic by early settlers, and it really thrived.
Yeah.
In America, it died. It doesn't get used. Son of a bitch is an American phrase.
Yeah.
It doesn't get used. You don't hear British people saying. I mean, they say a lot of other stuff that's probably much more colorful.
Yeah.
But it's very ingrained into the U.S. culture to the point where just saying son of a, you know how that ends, right?
Yeah. And it's I'd say it's one of my, I don't know if we'll ever do an episode on cherished profanities, but it's one that I find when I'm angry, it's a go-to one. I like it because the bad part's at the end, so if there's children around, you can catch yourself.
Yeah.
But it's also one that I don't think I've ever called somebody that in anger, but it is something, if I see an old friend, I will greet them as that.
Get over here, you son of a bitch. Yeah, absolutely. And we should do an episode. We can talk about cherished, what did you call it?
Cherished profanities.
Cherished profanities. And then we can also talk about terms that we use because we don't, we want to use a euphemism for the thing we want to say, especially around our kids.
Right.
A big one for me that you may be one of the few people that will appreciate, but I've been saying this my whole life.
Okay.
Because I don't want to say son of a bitch. I'll say son of a motherless goat, which comes from one of our movies that we talk about all the time, Three Amigos.
Yes.
So on that note, we've done it. We've done 2 idioms and a new slang. So now we're going to move on to our Know Your Onion segment with Erin Sarro from Panic at the Costco.
This is Robert Bankett, host of True Facts with Robert Bankett. True fact, cows' stomachs are made up of 4 pouches. The reticulum, the rumen, the omasum, and the abomasum. Also, T. Hollis Mellencamp is an asshole.
Erin Sarro is our guest today. She's a creative director, podcaster, a mom, a fitness and dance enthusiast, and most importantly, by far, my partner on the Panic at the Costco podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can watch us on YouTube. Erin, how are you?
I'm good. I would probably put enthusiast in quotes, but yeah, I.
Well, I mean, you do dance, right?
I do. Dance, I love. I've been doing that my entire life. Fitness, I'm a fitness, I don't know. I have a okay relationship with fitness. We'll put it that way. I'm a fitness, I don't know, what word would you like to call that?
You're
Honest.
a student. Yeah. I was gonna say, I have a very dysfunctional relationship with fitness. Fitness and I haven't been speaking for quite some time, so at least you have a healthy relationship with it. So last time I saw you, we were together, and you had a run-in with some very competitive people. Speaking of a game which we're about to play, and who didn't care too much for social distancing. Do you recall that?
I do recall that. Yeah, so you and I were at this very spacious outdoor brewery around town.
Yep.
And we had a nice little table. And right by this table, we see, and everything is very socially distanced here. I mean, there were rules up everywhere. You could not order a beer without a mask. Everyone was supposed to be 6 feet apart, which they were. So I felt good. We felt comfortable there. Anyway, we're at this table and we see these rows of cornhole boards set up. There's probably like 12 of them, would you say?
Yeah. And I just remember thinking at the time, like, oh, that's cool that I guess they play cornhole sometimes. Like, obviously not tonight because people are so actually, even though when you think about it, it's a sort of socially distanced game, but I just assumed it was for non-COVID times. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I thought like they just left them up and like left it to people to say, hey, I would play or not, whatever. So Scott and I are distancing at our table, like I said, which is made for about like maybe 4 people. It's got this big umbrella, and we see these a bunch of people come in with colored t-shirts on, no masks, and bags of bean bags. So the cornholers, right?
Competitive cornhole. Competitive hole, they call it for short. Yes.
So there's about 20, I would say like 20, 25 of them. They're drinking and they're starting to play. And that's when Scott pretty much throws me to the wolves. He gets up and gets us beers, which is very nice to do. But like soon after that, it starts downpouring. And now like we're in a row of about 10 of these umbrella tables. And behind us on the grass are large tents, like big grassy area with exactly 0 people sitting under these tents. And to our left or right is the main building with a giant overhang where just a few people are taking shelter. So do they go to either of those? No. I'd say like 6 of them swarmed under my umbrella, pulled up a seat. Like, of course they're supposed to be there. The guy at the next table, his like eyes are bugging out because of course I look over to him and say, as to say with my own eyes, do you believe this shit?
Right.
So I stand up and I said, I backed up and I was like, I'm sorry guys, we're supposed to be socially distancing and we're trying to do that. Can you maybe go under the tent or over there? And they looked at me like I had, 5 heads. And remember, they're not wearing masks. So I'm getting nervous. And again, there's a million places they can go for shelter. So they laugh and one guy rolls his eyes and he just goes, oh, like I'm one of those people who like sane people who actually believe in science, but like
right. So it's like then the rest of the night I feel like they were eyeballing us, and especially you. Like,
yeah. Well, my jersey came out and we had a few words. We had words. Just because I was like, first of all, that was just rude. I mean, come on. Like,
Well,
we're in
and
a
these are little tables. Imagine a little tiny picnic table. Like Erin and I are doing our best to like not be really close to each other just for the social distancing reason. And it's like for 6 of the cornholios, as she kept calling them, to join in, it was pretty great. So
Listen, I'm sorry you went through that, but at the same time, to play devil's advocate, professional cornhole is no joke. These guys are they're ready to compete.
It's true.
They're all probably, I don't know if they've gotten caught up like baseball and football, like if they're testing for drugs. These guys might be all jacked up on testosterone.
It's true. That is so true. And also, like rec leagues are getting canceled left and right. So, but not cornhole, right? So cornhole, as we said, we're at the brewery, like this must go on, right? Like, it's kind of like the mail must go through, cornhole must go on no matter
and
what.
Most importantly, you seem not to have COVID. And if you do, we're doing this on Skype. So I'm, lessons learned for everybody, I guess.
That's right. And we didn't get hit with like a stray beanbag, because those things, I gotta imagine a beanbag, somebody throws one hard enough, it depends on where it hits you, it could do some damage. So
beanbag to the beanbag, not a good combo.
So speaking of games and games that must go on, we're gonna play a little game we call Know Your Onions. Erin, have you been doing any prep for this? Are you ready? You have any questions?
I have not prepped at all.
Okay.
So just throw it at me like a beanbag.
Okay. So here's how the game works. Steve and I are going to ask you a series of questions to test your knowledge about the origins of some words and phrases, and maybe some curveballs or some curved beanbags thrown in there as well. So you're going to get multiple choices, and you just give us the one that you think is correct. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Question 1. Which of the following is the true origin of the phrase "Saved by the Bell"? Is it A, in the 1800s, if someone was mistakenly pronounced dead and buried alive, they could, if later revived, ring a bell that was attached to the coffin, and be saved. Hence, one's life could be literally saved by the bell. B, the expression is boxing slang, which originated in the latter half of the 19th century. A boxer who is in danger of losing a bout can be saved from defeat by the bell, which marks the end of the round. Or C, Saved by the Bell is an American television sitcom which was broadcast by NBC from August 20th, 1989 to May 22nd, 1993. The show spawned 2 spin-off series, Saved by the Bell: The College Years and Saved by the Bell: The New Class, and also popularized the titular phrase, that's a hard word to say, the titular phrase, whatever, which means to be saved by a last-minute intervention. So in summary, is it the rigged coffin with the bell, boxing, Saved by the Bell, or Zach Morris and Kelly Kapowski and the crew?
Gosh. Well, okay. So I feel like I've heard A and B at some point. I feel like those gosh, I don't know. And all right, so we know that it's not Mario Lopez, right? Can we?
That's generally my answer when I'm not sure. My answer is Mario Lopez, but it's your show.
I mean, I'm not going to give it away, but I think you're probably moving in the right direction.
I mean, as much as I want it to be that, but truly, what were they really saved by? Were they saved by the bell, or were they mostly saved by Belding?
Well,
like, what were they really saved by? That's okay, a different story.
Well, when the clock lets out a warning, and I don't know,
the alarm gives out a warning.
You know you'll never make it on time, right? So
I think it was Zach's cunningness and his ingenuity that really saved them all the time, right?
You're right. It's buddy bands that saved them, is what saved them. But yeah. Okay, we're gonna need an answer.
All right. Gosh, I feel like I've heard A most recently.
Okay.
And I don't. All right. But B makes more sense. I'm gonna lock in B.
B.
The correct answer is B.
Very good.
There were coffins that were invented with bells. That contraption did exist, but this is not the origin of the phrase. It is the boxing origin. So you're 1 for 1. Good job, Erin.
Okay.
Question 2. Which of the following is the true story of Leroy Jenkins? A. Leroy Jenkins was the inspiration for Leroy Lounge, located in Montgomery, Alabama. According to the Leroy Lounge website, Leroy Jenkins was everyone's favorite beer-drinking, clover-eating horse was reunited with his owner, El Ray, and with El Ray's help, he opened the eponymous bar, Leroy. End quote. B. Babyface Leroy Jenkins was an American blues singer, drummer, and guitarist, active in Chicago from the mid-1940s until the late 1950s. He was a significant figure in the development of the post-war electric Chicago blues sound, notably as a member of the Muddy Waters Band during its formative years. And finally, C. Leroy Jenkins is the name of a player in the game World of Warcraft. The character became popular in 2005 from his role in a viral video of game footage where, having been absent during his group's discussion of a detailed plan, Leroy returns and ruins it by charging straight into combat, shouting his own name. The character became an internet meme. So, to recap, A. Leroy Jenkins, the inspiration for Leroy Lounge. B. Leroy Jenkins, American blues singer, part of the Muddy Waters Band. Or C. Leroy Jenkins, player in World of Warcraft who became an internet meme.
Okay. A, I think, is something Steve just made up on the fly. Like, I feel like that came out of your brain.
I take that as a compliment.
You should take that as a compliment. That it was very well thought out. There was some southernness to it. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put that as Steve made up. B, I feel like that might be too expected. I don't know. It sounds maybe like it's right, but I really think it's C, because I feel like I've heard this.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a World of Warcraft player.
You sure?
What?
Can you believe it?
She sticks to
Yeah.
competitive bag.
Yeah.
Cornhole.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that, and okay, maybe he's not the same guy that created Pwned, PWND. I don't know. I'm thinking there's some sort of story.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them. Maybe it's in the same thing. Maybe it's just in the same compartment of my brain. I'm going with C. He's Leroy Jenkins screaming out on their game.
All right. And the correct answer is C. 2 for 2. And by the way, Leroy Lounge actually is a real place, a real bar. It is the sponsor for True Facts with Robert Banquet, but that is the story of the Leroy and Leroy Lounge as a horse. And just for your information, I appreciate you thought I made that up, but that is actually a real place.
Question 3. Which of the following is the true origin of the phrase Peeping Tom? Is it A? The name comes from the legend of Lady Godiva's naked ride through the streets of Coventry in order to persuade her husband to alleviate the harsh taxes on the town's poor. The story goes that the townsfolk agreed not to observe Godiva as she passed by, but that Peeping Tom broke that trust and spied on her. B. Thomas the Tank Engine is an anthropomorphized fictional steam locomotive in the Railway series books by Reverend Wilbert Awdry, published in 1945. Years after Awdry's wife encouraged him to publish the story, she disclosed that Thomas had initially been conceived as an adult locomotive. In this version, Thomas had many vulgar habits, one of which was spying on female trains in various states of undress. When Thomas couldn't contain his excitement any longer, he would let out a hearty chugga chugga peep peep. This revelation stunned the public, and the phrase Peeping Tom was born. Or is it C? Years after his wife's death, Thomas Jefferson fathered at least 6 of Sally Hemings' children. But prior to that, Jefferson's political opponent, Aaron Burr, was said to have been the source of numerous rumors about Jefferson's inappropriate liaisons, which led to the nickname of Old Peeping Tom, which later became used more broadly as a term for a male voyeur. So in summary, is it A, Lady Godiva's naked ride through town? Is it B, an adult version of Thomas the Tank Engine? Or is it 3, Old Peeping Tom Jefferson? What do you think?
Okay, well, I have to my left a collection of about 50 to 100 Thomas the Tank Engines. And because I am in my kids' playroom right now.
Okay, so you know the history.
I do know history, and I will say that some of those engines, but less Thomas, more James, is a bit creepy. They're a bit creepy.
James is creepy.
I can definitely see he's really arrogant. But it wouldn't be Thomas. Thomas wouldn't have peeped. It would have been James. So it would have been peeping James. So I have to eliminate that one. The first one just seems too out there. Lady Godiva. I mean, do we really know anything about the phrase origin from that time? I don't know. It just seems like too long ago. So the last one was, yes, okay, Thomas Jefferson. Just so happens that maybe a few weeks ago, I went down a Thomas Jefferson rabbit hole and Sally Hemings and learned about all of that and all of his, children. It was well known. It was in the political cartoons. So it was out there. It wasn't a quiet thing. And I believe that Burr would do something like that. So I'm going to say C.
Okay, the answer is A. Lady, how dare you besmirch Thomas Jefferson like that? I'm just joking. So, Lady Godiva's naked ride through the streets may or may not have actually happened, and there may or may not have actually been a Tom. But the legend is undoubtedly the origin of the phrase peeping Tom. So you're 2 for 3.
Okay, but I also think Thomas Jefferson may have been a peeper too.
Question 4. Richard Simmons is a world-famous exercise instructor known for his outrageous personality and line of workout videos sold through infomercials. He famously dropped out of public life in 2014, but recently reactivated his YouTube channel. Which experience is your most embarrassing experience involving Richard Simmons? Was it A, when your husband found your DVD collection of Sweatin' to the Oldies? B, for your 2009 Thanksgiving dinner, when your family discovered that you cooked the entire meal based on recipes from the Deal-A-Meal cookbook? Or C, the time that Richard Simmons kissed you on the mouth in public at a mall?
You guys, I wanted that Deal-A-Meal so badly. I was fascinated. Didn't you want to just put it in all the different pockets and just rearrange?
It looks so convenient, and the color coding and everything.
There's something hypnotic about it. And by the way, I sincerely like Richard Simmons. He's somebody that helps out people. He makes money, but he will call people and try to help them out. I hope he comes back. And maybe, Erin, you can help draw him back out.
I love Richard too. I have to say that as much as he is, he's kind of a cultural joke, but he really has helped a lot of people. And I was sweating to the oldies. I mean, I don't know. I think that he must have helped a lot of people lose at least 5 pounds with that intense workout.
Everyone, by the way, you remember the infomercials? Everyone in the infomercials, let's just say it must have been their first day, because they weren't necessarily what you would call.
I don't like all this negative Richard Simmons energy I'm hearing. I also think somebody's trying to dodge the answer to the question.
True. Yeah, we still have a game. We still have a game going here.
Okay. Like I said, I didn't have the Deal-A-Meal. Wanted the Deal-A-Meal. It's got to be C.
Yes.
Got to be C. Yes. So that is it really happened. These lips were kissed by Richard Simmons himself. There was a bit of pandemonium. He also accused my friend and I of witchcraft. So technically I've been called a witch by Richard Simmons.
Wow.
And kissed by Richard Simmons within the same, like, I don't know, it was like a 2-minute span.
That's
that I
a
saw
pretty
him.
big day. So what happened that you were in a situation that Richard Simmons could kiss you in the mouth?
Well, this was like early 90s mall, of course, like, our parents had just dropped us off in my Dodge Caravan. Of course, we ran as quickly as we could from that caravan into the food court, ready to spend an entire day at the mall hanging out. And there was a lot of commotion in the food court. It's like, what is going on? And there's a stage set up.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of, I will say, first time sweating to the oldies public there. Apparently Richard Simmons was coming, and we're like, oh man, I love Richard Simmons, because who doesn't?
Yes.
And we decided to get in line and wait to see Richard Simmons, because we had nothing else to do. We were going to be at the mall for 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So we sat there and waited, and my friend was like, this is like going on like an hour. Where is he? This is ridiculous. Do we even really care about Richard this much? And the people in line did not like that. They did not, just like you, Steve, they did not like any negative Richard talk whatsoever. It was getting them agitated. Anyway, so all of a sudden music starts pumping, lights start going, and out comes, Richard in his fro. He's got this shirt on that says "Go to Health," which I thought was super clever, and it's inspired me as a writer to this day. So he gets on the stage and sits down in his chair, and he goes, girls, you too. And we looked around, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Security guard was like, points at us. We get called up on the stage, to our luck, which makes the crowd even more furious.
Yeah.
He was waiting in line for like 2 hours. I don't know if they camped out. I have no idea.
They're also in the food court waiting to see Richard Simmons. That
Right.
seems kind of mean. That seems, you're provoking the crowd at this point.
Yes, it was. It totally was not fair. I mean, there was like an
How many people just peeled off to a great steak or Sbarro's at that point?
I would have been really angry. I would have maybe just started like a mob, but that's me and my heritage. So of course,
Right.
But so he would get up there and he's like, "What is all of this commotion? What are you all doing? You all are witches. You're witches." That's when he told us we're witches, and then he talked a lot about Gone with the Wind, because my best friend is named Melanie, and he had Dalmatians named Melanie. He loved the story. And chitter chatter, we had some aliases. We got him to sign an autographed copy, which I think I still have in my old drawer in my mom's house. I gotta go check that. Could be worth millions right now.
That's gonna be that's worth something.
Yeah.
Has to be.
We're about to leave, and he goes, "Girls, come back!" And he points to his mouth, and we're like, "Is he serious? Does he want us to kiss him?" So of course we go back. The security guard motions us back, and so we just kind of go to kiss him on the cheek, and he's like, "No, the lips." And I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Oh,
so we did it. So I don't know why. I was like, "Why does he have to have it on the lips?" But then again, you don't question.
This is why she gets so touchy when people try to crowd into her space at a brewery.
Yeah, I know.
So
you're having beanbag flashbacks after seeing Richard in those shorts.
Erin, you did a great job today. Thank you for joining us.
And by the way, with your last answer, 100%.
Oh yeah.
Anytime you kiss Richard Simmons, bonus credit, 100% score. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. So I win the whole game.
You do.
Thank you for playing Know Your Onions, and everyone, please be sure to check out Panic at the Costco at your favorite podcast provider and or YouTube. Thanks for joining us, Erin.
Thank you.
So that's our episode. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear some more from Speaksies, please follow us at patreon.com/Speaksies. We have, for our Patreon supporters, a pay whatever you want model. So any amount that you'd like to provide to help support our podcast gets you open access to everything. So we appreciate your support.
Yeah.
We have some great extra content for you, including our post-game show. that we will record minutes after we wrap this up. We'll talk about our thoughts about the show, give some insight into what we're doing personally, sexually, maybe. Who knows?
You might be surprised, actually.
You might be surprised, as this is our bridge to our opening our OnlyFans site. But for now, just follow us at patreon.com/Speaksies.
All right, Bob's your uncle.
Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil.
So get on your feet and clap your hands. Let's ram it right now with the LA Ram.
Hollywood handsome, Dodge City tough. If you throw it my way, it's gonna get rough. I like to ram it, as you can see. Nobody likes ramming any more than me.
They call me Jeter, nobody dresses sweeter. But under this cool is a quarterback mistreater. I come from the end, looking for the sack. I don't stop coming till I put them on their back. This is limousine with it, my moves are like dreams. They call me the demon on special teams. I know how to rock from the toes to the head. When I pull the trigger, I'll knock you dead.
I'm a mountain man from West VA. They call me Herc and I came to play. I learned long ago to ram it just right. You can ram it all day and ram it all night. Ram it. Do you know how to ram it? Let's ram it. We know how to ram it. We'll be rockin' LA. So let's ram it today. Let's ram it.
Speaksies.